everyone, and welcome to PopCultX, where we talk about all things pop culture from our Gen X perspective. My name is Danny, and along with Gabriel, we're joined tonight by a fantastic writer who you might recognize, friend of the show here, and that is Josh Trujillo to our special Witches episode. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hail Satan.
Yeah.
It's funny you said I was just watching Hocus Pocus last night, and of course when the scene where they go up to Master and the guy in the devil costume, and it just reminded me of that. So thanks for bringing that up. Well, before we dive into witches, I had a question I was thinking of earlier today, and I'll ask both of you this, and maybe you guys can just give me what's your thoughts on it. If you could live in any movie or TV film universe for a week, what would you pick and why?
Oh my God. That's a really hard question. I think that I brought up before that there's that 80s B movie, Night of a Comet, where a comet comes and all the population dies off, and there's like these two sisters that are like having fun shopping and like driving Lamborghinis and eating whatever they want. I still would love to live in that fantasy world just for like a little bit, just where there's not a lot of people around.
There's no one else around.
Distance myself from some people and like have my husband with me, and like we could have fun and like go ransack the mall and drive fancy cars and do whatever we want. And then humanity can come back, but just have like a good like month or 30 days where no one else is around would be great.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. How about you, Josh?
I'm trying to think of like one where I'd be like pampered, right? Like I just want like if I have to be somewhere for a week, I want to enjoy myself. Like can I be at the beach that makes you go old without going old? Like that's the kind of situation I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
For like a fictional world, I don't know where I'd want to live. We're talking about witches tonight. Maybe Oz. It sounds appropriate.
Ooh, there you go. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. You could talk to the animals if we're doing the wicked side of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I do not want my dog to talk to me. He has strong opinions, weird political views, the whole thing.
I was thinking about the remake series Time Bandits, only because I would like to jump around to different historical time periods, and I think that'd be a lot of fun to witness those. Of course, with someone who could read a map well, I guess, the time map. I'm not sure if have you guys either seen that show, the reboot series of Time Bandits at all?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then, have you seen the original movie?
I do remember the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I think I remember watching it when I was sick when I was a kid. So I relate to it as like having a fever and being sick and like not like it making me not feel well. But jumping through time is always very iffy for like a brown person because like depending on where you go, I may not be wanted. So like that's never really appealed to me going back to the future. Like I would like maybe like to go to the future, but maybe not going into the past.
No, I think this is something I thought of too. My first head was like, what's like the most idyllic, perfect place? And I was like, Pleasantville? And I was like, no, Pleasantville is like not the place you want to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe.
That's true. I understand that. Yeah. I guess that's always iffy, but to witness historical events, I guess I'm just a fan of that, I guess.
That's a cool one.
So.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Thanks for playing along with my little game there. But we are talking about witches, like we said earlier, and I guess just right off the bat, I mean, witches have been around since what? Forever, and they've made their mark on pop culture in so many different ways. And I guess just right off the bat, who's your favorite witch in pop culture? Do you have one? Can you pick just one?
I can't pick one. That's really hard. I think that like I just to like as a preface, like I'm a really big fan of witches. Like I love witches. But like just from growing up, like Bewitched was like one of my favorite like witch icons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then going in through like high school, college, like The Craft was one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy being the villain, but being my favorite witch in that film. There's just so many. Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman being witch sisters in I forget the name of the movie.
Practical magic.
Practical Magic, yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, they're all different types of witches, like Maleficent with Angelina Jolie, like I love as well. So I can't say that there's like one in particular one that is my favorite. It just would have to be like, am I wanting to go like the cheerful, like good-natured witch, an evil witch, like a nature witch? Like, there's so many different types that you could go for. I can't say like one in particular. There's like I have too many favorites.
Fair enough.
Oh man. Trying to think of who wasn't named because I agree with all those answers. You know who I like? I like Willow from Buffy. She's
Hmm.
one of my favorite
Okay.
witches. She was just so cool and like you get to see her like evolution as a witch. Obviously, she like spoiler alert goes a little too far with it, but the whole journey was really fun for me.
Yeah, that reminds me of another like instance where you get to see a witch kind of start one way and then grow into a different way was Witches of Eastwick, which is
Hmm.
another one of my favorite, like me being a little gay boy, of course, like I love Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer and Susan Sarandon. Like they were, like the totally, they turned into like these really powerful, amazing witches at the end of the movie. But they're another set of iconic witches that I love. What about you, Danny? Do you have a favorite witch?
Uh, I don't know if I do, but I think the one that I remember the most is probably Angelica Houston in The Witches, where especially I think we mentioned this before, Gabe, where she takes off her mask, her human face to reveal her real witch face, and that was just like such a memorable scene for me. So I guess if I have to pick one, it would be her. But The Craft is probably my favorite witch movie, which we'll get into in a little bit in movies wise. But yeah, that's for character wise or whatnot. I'd probably pick her.
Yeah.
You said depending upon what you want, whether you want a lighthearted or good witch or a bad witch, do you have a preference for that? Do you want someone that's wise and powerful or malevolent? Which is your preference for that? How do you prefer your witch?
Yeah, I think that my favorite type of witch is sort of based in reality, because I know a couple witches. Like I respect like the actual like religious aspect of it.
Okay.
And so, um, I like the ones that are sort of like based on reality versus I shouldn't say it because I love all of them, but I think that's my favorite type is the one that isn't the horror like ugly stereotypical witch that people hate. It's more of one that's based in reality, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of oh gosh. I like the really earthy witches. I like the kind of ones that like Tara and Willow were in Buffy. But like I guess it's kind of like the fun is watching like someone really be like dastardly and evil and powerful, right? So like even like what like the evil queen from like Snow White is like a good
Yes,
one.
that's what I
Someone
was
who's
thinking of.
like someone who's loving it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like Sabrina's aunts or something. You know what I mean? It's just like someone who really goes for it and revels in it.
Yeah. Well, I also like the aspect of witches that it seems to be like they're persecuted and they're kind of doling out justice towards the people that are persecuting them like unjustly. And I
Hmm.
like obviously like that appeals to me, being a minority on many different aspects. And that form of like justice or like karmic justice is like really appeals to me. Especially like seeing women being able to reclaim their power and sort of win over, the men that are trying to like bring them down. So
Mm.
there's that aspect of it that I really appeals to me.
What about the opposite of that? So like the Salem witch trials and the Crucible, where like it's like this mass paranoia against witches. I guess it wouldn't appeal to you, but do you think that type of storytelling helps shed light on that, on women taking power or witches taking back their power?
Well, I love the Crucible. Like I that was like one of my favorites in high school. But I think that it's indicative of like how society can go after women that especially like if I remember correctly, like one of them being like a woman of color, and them saying that she was like the head of the witches and all of
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah. Tituba.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it just it I'm very close to my mom, and my mom has sort of like a witchy side to her, and that just sort of like I don't know, like there's like a sort of justice when it comes to that you see that there are women that are persecuted for being strong, kind of independent, free thinking women, and then they get punished, but then they can kind of turn it around and like reclaim their power, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, right? It's like there is all this like deep rooted kind of suspicion of women with power.
Mhm.
And like that goes back beyond. That's why witches are one of the oldest like monster types, right? Because like
Mhm.
nothing's scarier than a woman with power, I guess. I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but uh that's kind of like, and then like, obviously the real world issues where people like are casting people out of society because they're a witch is like just madness to me. And people are just looking for an excuse to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, but they're just normal harmless people like anyone else.
Yeah.
Except they can cast spells, well, real witches. And
Wow.
but yeah, you're right. It is just a way of society of casting them out, and then taking one person's word over another, and then just grouping on that. I remember having to live in the Crucible world when I was actually in the play in high school, so it was it was quite memorable for me, and it's one of my favorite as well.
Yeah.
Which movie or which movie or TV show do you think nailed witchcraft the best? When you think of what witchcraft is, and you think about how you derive it or how it's portrayed, which one do you think nailed it the best?
That's really hard because like I feel like that's opening up to criticism from like will real witches that are going to be like, no,
Ah,
That's
okay.
Hollywood. Like I don't want to get bashed for anyone watching and telling me like, oh, that's completely not real. But I would say that practical magic wasn't that far fetched. It being like very female centric, like them having a circle of women of all generations kind of coming together to kind of take care of
Mhm.
their own. And that is seemed like it was very realistic, and it wasn't too far fetched, at least for me. Like I think that I know women that are like that, and so like I kind of it's sort of like it really endearing watching that movie and being like, oh, that kind of reminds me of like someone that I know. So I would say that that movie wasn't very like that off. So maybe that was one of the ones that was like kind of closest to reality.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm trying to think of like that's the problem when you do a story about witches. You expect them to be like transforming people into mice or like changing the
Yeah,
laws of physics, and like that's not how we do things. I think, um, but I think that like when it's portrayed as kind of like more grounded and like earthy, and I like when it's mysterious. Usually, you'll see like in a witch movie, practical magic's probably a good example of that, where small spells have like ramifications and like you know what I mean. There's like an effortlessness to it because it's like it's kind of druidic in that way. But I'm sure I'm crossing pop culture rails by saying that.
Yeah, but that I mean, for me, I guess I just don't know enough to say anything. But I'll go back to the craft. I think of the coven they make. How they need the four of them, and it. I don't know how close that is to what is actually necessary for witchcraft, but when I think about it, that's what I think of.
Hmm.
A sacrifice they make, you know, blood spilling into it and just making that coven with their sisters in order to bring about the earth power, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stuck with me from the craft was that idea it's the rule is, I think it's like the rule of thirds. That's not what it's called, but it's like what you put out there is going to come back to you
Hmm.
threefold, like
Hmm.
whether it's you're putting out good or bad. And that's like a really good life lesson, I think, for everyone, is like what
That's
you put
true.
out there is like even if you don't subscribe to like witchcraft or like a Wicca religion or anything like that. It's just like the world kind of what you put out is what's going to come back to you.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like what I remember from the craft of being like a real life lesson. Other than it just them being really cool, like that they were like really as far as when you talk about pop culture, like just really trendy as far as their look. They
Yeah.
did a really good job of making them like just really cool girls.
Hmm.
I really like the fact that there was like a diversity with Rachel True being included in the cast, but it was just like I knew girls that wanted to be like that, guys who wanted to, date, be like them too, and it was just like a very popular, trendy movie, I think, and people that it kind of, and I also think that it brought people to Wicca and wanting to learn more about the craft because of that film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I did. Like if that's it, I can do spells like that. No.
Yeah.
Um, on the opposite spectrum of that, we have I don't want to say opposite, maybe it's far more far-fetched, but it's currently probably one of the most popular witchcraft shows out there right now, and that's Agatha All Along.
Mhm.
Have you guys watched any of it, or have you guys seen it, enjoyed it?
As of this recording, I haven't seen this week's episode. What is today, the 23rd?
Yes.
So I'm one behind, but I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm mostly caught up.
Okay. And thoughts on it so far?
I'm really enjoying it. Honestly, I feel like it's picking up steam as the series progresses in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
Um, there's still kind of like there's a lot of mystery surrounding the show, which I appreciate. It feels like more of a follow up to WandaVision than maybe like the Doctor Strange movie did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I still enjoyed that movie. But this is like very female powered centric and like weird and like very actor focused. There are a lot of strong performances in it and
Hmm.
not a lot of showy special effects.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think this is a good template for them to follow, I think, going forward, because I think the show's been a success so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. This is a good template for the MCU TV television to follow because their storytelling style, the way they reference different time eras, almost like they did in WandaVision with like each of their trials, has been just
Hmm.
great to watch. It's been really fun. The song they sing is just really cool. I really enjoy that.
Oh, it's such
Um,
an earworm.
yeah, it's been really really fun to watch. I don't know. Does it have any more meaning to you, Josh? Because you did write a comic book series storyline with Wiccan, which now we know is the character that the team turned out to be. Um, does it have any more connection with you because of the series you wrote for that?
Yeah, like I'm one of many people who've gotten to write for Billy, and I love the character, and like I was kind of curious how they were going to address his origins because
Hmm.
not that they're like overly complicated, but it's kind of like it's all rooted, kind of like House of M and Avenger Disassembled, and this, and so I think they found kind of a shortcut that is complicated in its own way, but like complicated in a way that you can tell stories with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy with how they're doing Billy. Um, my my boyfriend is a big WandaVision fan, and
Okay.
so he was kind of watching the show with a critical eye, and he was like, "I don't trust that." What's the name of the actor who plays Wiccan? Is it
Joe Locke.
Joe Locke? He's like, "I don't think Joe Locke's a good actor. It doesn't feel like he's trying." And I was like, "What if that's like part of the play? Like, what if that's like
Mm,
part of the
hmm.
mystery?"
Hmm.
And I was right.
No, yeah, I get that. Yeah, at first I could see how he would think that. I was like, well, how can we just kind of lackadaisical about it? But it wasn't his character. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so observant about stuff like that. He always catches it like 5 minutes before they like show their hand.
The thing that I'm really appreciating is that we finally have a really cool like representation for male witches, or if you want to call them warlocks or
Hmm.
serves or whatever you want to call them, that is just I think Joe Locke was a good pick because he's really cute young guy. He's as far as like the mascara, the way that they did like his eyeliner and all of that like just fits him really well, the character. And also that he's gay and the representation when it comes to that. because there hasn't really been very cool, like many cool male witches or warlocks, if
Mhm.
you will. It's like it's obviously it's centered around the feminine, so it makes sense that that's the case. But um, prior to this, it's like we didn't really have very many role models when it comes to male witches, right? It's always been for the girls. And so I think that it's kind of cool that now that not only the gay people can have him as like their cosplay, but just men in general can kind of play out their fantasy with Wiccan as well.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, like a whole generation of kids are going to grow up and like dress like Wiccan. That's like
Yeah.
crazy. If you
Yeah,
asked me like a few years ago, that would have been impossible.
yeah. When you think about that, does that and I don't I think we might have talked about that with your writing of Blue Beetle, but do you feel that there's responsibility when you have a character that so many people are sort of like waiting with bated breath of like the importance of like a gay role model or in a Latino character, does that like give you added pressure when you're writing that, like I got to make this character like extra cool or like have to make them more iconic because there are people that are really waiting for something like that to come to fruition?
That's a good question, and it's something I think depending on like what time of year it is, I kind of like flip flop a little bit on it because I think it's true we have an extra responsibility because there are simply fewer of these kinds of characters out there to make sure that they have a lasting impact and that they are memorable and that people want to read more about them, right? So they always get a little. Sometimes they'll get a little more attention than maybe they would if they were part of an ensemble, like a different ensemble, and someone else was writing that. But I with Wiccan, like he has such an important and like huge fandom that like is like international and like it's insane. I'll do San Diego Comic Con and people come up to me from like Brazil and they'll have their copy that they bought in Brazil and want me to sign that.
Oh wow.
And like just like you don't realize the impact this has beyond you. Uh, but I think people latch on to kind of like the heart of the character as much as they do the stories. And I think Wiccan's best stories are ahead of him too. I think there have been some great stories that have been done, but this is just the beginning. And the MCU is really going to like kickstart a lot of excitement around Wiccan and hopefully Hulkling soon. Um, so we'll see what happens. But I'm excited and I'm honored to be like have a small part in it.
Yeah. I think that's really cool to see that you're a part of such a lasting legacy with the character that's so important. That's really cool.
Yeah, and we got to use in my Hulkling and Wiccan story, we got to use Agatha in the first arc.
Oh,
But old woman, yeah, Agatha, she's been a little what do my friends call it? She got glammed up a little bit over the past couple of years in the Marvel 616.
yeah, she got yassified.
Yeah, I got the last old crone Agatha appearance, I think, before she transforms.
Yes.
Well, speaking of transform, how about Catherine Hahn playing Agatha? She's
Oh,
just been
yeah.
so fantastic. Any thoughts on that, you guys?
I love her. I think she's such a great actress. She brings so much nuance to the character,
Yeah.
and she's just a brilliant actress. I love her. I think I really became a fan of her on Transparent.
Mhm.
She was really great on that show, and I became a fan of her then. And she's still kind of putting out this amazing work. So I'm a real big fan.
Yeah, she's great. And I remember her from like, isn't she in like Anchorman and like a bunch of like random
Hmm.
comedies in like the
Yeah, she is.
2000s?
Yeah.
And she's so funny and like again, you couldn't have told me or convinced me 3 years ago that there was going to be a TV show and Wiccan was going to be the hottest thing that everyone's talking about for the month. And you never could have told me there was going to be an Agatha Harkness show where like the actress, did she win the Emmy? She got nominated for the Emmy, something like that.
Yeah,
Um, she's an esteem. It's a role now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those great dramatic roles for Catherine Hahn, and it's just so funny. She's Agatha Harkness. She's the old lady who was babysitting Franklin Richards. She's Wanda's mentor of sorts, and
Hmm.
now she now she's as big as any of them.
Yeah.
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 Really cool. I speaking of like dressing up in cosplay, there's a the joke that everyone's going to be dressed up as Wiccan this Halloween, and it's going to be like the crown, like a leather harness. You have to keep your eyes peeled to like see how the guys dressed up this year.
Oh yeah, I live. I won't be doing the West Hollywood Carnival this year, but I'm sure I'll see it at a party or two.
Yeah.
In going back just to witches in general a little bit. So the witches are known for, casting spells, of course. If you could cast one of those spells in real life, which one would you choose? If you could cast a spell.
I don't know. I like intangible things, so I feel
Okay.
like a luck spell or like a luck potion would be interesting to like give someone. Like I don't know how that would pay off, but I always like in
Oh, I see.
stories where that like I like how Black Cat's powers work, where she gives people bad luck, or like even Wanda's powers in the 90s and early 2000s were probability based, and they weren't kind of infused with this reality warping magic.
Okay.
Uh, so I like that or Long Shot from the X-Men, another luck based power character. I like that stuff.
That's
Or
cool.
Domino from like Deadpool and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that's really cool.
Kind of drawing up from like Mexican brujeria roots that I have.
Hmm.
There was always a spell that I always found that was kind of really funny is that I won't go into the specifics of the spell, but you could it basically was making the person really clumsy and like making them like a buffoon so that they would not be able to like be graceful. You would basically tie their legs together so that they're always like knocking into stuff, knocking things down, just becoming a clumsy oaf. And I always put like that in my back pocket of like that's kind of a cool spell to have. Like there's a
Oh, I
couple
love that.
I would like to put that on. I'm like that might be like the little evil streak of that I have, but I always thought that would be a really cool spell to do.
That's fun. Just give someone, yeah, they're walking around, they just drop stuff randomly and can't. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Like it's bad, but it's not like super evil. So it's just like it's just evil enough.
It's just annoying.
Yeah.
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 What about
That's
you, Tony? Would you cast any spells?
I don't think I know any spells, but I like the luck idea from
Yeah.
Josh. I think giving someone a potion that so that they can either have good luck or better fortune, I guess, and that's really cool. Being able to help
I
someone.
like spells. I think I like magic that doesn't break the laws of physics. I like spells that kind of push things reality as far as it could go. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I I'll just go from when I'm playing like Dungeons and Dragons. I never choose a magical character because I don't like all the different spells and having to pick one discipline to focus on. So
Yeah.
I always steer away from them just for that. So I'll just take what you guys have to say and just use that.
You guys are so nice. You came up with like nice answers of wishing someone luck. Mine are like things that I would kind of like naughty.
Revenge.
But I like that answer though. That's a really cool, Gabe. I like your answer though.
I think the other one that like kind of would be in the back of my head is like a glamour type thing where you could kind of transform your outward appearance and like pull people into thinking that you look like another person. I think that would be fun. I definitely wouldn't use it for like evil purposes, but maybe just for like a night or two, like be someone else would be kind of fun.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
I can see that having a lot of practical applications for
Yeah. Mine,
evil.
mine, mine are like just like naughty, like little fun ones that like you could have fun with it and play pranks on people, but
Hmm.
nothing too bad. I don't know. There's my when I was growing up, my sister did a spell on a man to make him fall in love with her. And that just like under any circumstances, I think everyone knows that would be like a really bad idea. But she scared herself so much so that like she had to go into this whole ordeal of like trying to undo the spell, and she was like crying and freaked out and like being a over dramatic teenager, and just from that I remember like being like, yeah, I don't really do anything like too crazy like messing
Yeah.
with people. Like you kind of have to like be responsible with like thinking of like how you're impacting other people's lives and how it's going to impact your life by like putting that out there. But that was a good lesson that I learned from watching my sister.
And see, I don't think I could be a good witch then because I wouldn't be thinking about that stuff. I just, focus on how it can improve me or what it focuses on, not the bigger picture of it.
Sure, but maybe you need that right now. There's no good witches or bad witches. They're just witches.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well, one last question I have for you about witches, real quick, you guys. So they've given us in TV, books, movies, lots of moments where you're very, you're cheering for that moment, or it gives you chills. Do you guys have any moments memorable to yourself from either a movie, TV, book where you're like, wow, yeah, I was like, yeah, go, or I was like shivering because it really gave you a chill?
So, in there's this old movie, Return to Oz from the '80s. It's
Mhm.
like the Wizard of Oz, but it's like a dark fantasy
Oh yeah.
film. And so there's a witch in there named Mombi, and her gimmick, she's actually a composite of two different characters from the book,
Okay.
but she is this beautiful woman who can remove her head and replace it with another beautiful woman's head. And so she has this like long cabinet filled with like all these human heads, and they're like alive. They like blink and talk and feel. And like that was so creepy to me. Like there's a scene where like Dorothy is escaping Mombi and like knocks her head off, I think it is, and Mombi's like chasing after her without a head and like all that stuff. Like that was so scary to me. That movie is very scary. And Mombi is a great spooky villain. But she's like in the books, she's like a very, very old woman and like a classic witch.
All
And
right.
then she's combined with this character. I want to say her name's Languidir, who just like a silly society gal who loses her head.
Ah, yeah. Return to Oz is. I remember watching that as a kid and was like, wow, that was pretty scary. And then watching it even, as an adult, it's like, I can't believe he saw that as a child and it was a Disney movie.
I
Yeah,
know.
and with
Yeah.
Veruza Balk was in that, who
Yeah.
became Nancy in the Craft.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was a
yeah, that
great movie.
was like her big breakout role. Um, I think that one of the ones that were like the most memorable moments for me is in Practical Magic, where they sort of all come together and sort of cleanse the Nicole Kidman character from like the evil spirit that's inhabiting her, and it's just like such a fun moment. Like you're like kind of wish that you were part of like their coven, because like everyone comes together and they're like drinking wine and like casting spells, and like it just looks like it's a lot of fun. I don't know. Like it just like looks like, oh, I'd want to be part of that coven. Like it just looks really fun. But in all of them, it's kind of sort of like that moment where like they their powers are realized, right? Another scene that I remember that was kind of um shocking is in Coven, when the one particular witch is being burned alive and she screams out Balenciaga. That was really memorable for me, with like her red hair and like dressed
Oh,
in.
I loved that character. She like
Yeah,
kept dying, right? That was her
yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
she was so good. Who's the name of that actress? She was great.
I can't remember her. She's from so many good roles she has. But yeah, she's an amazing actress.
Yeah, Coven's one of those like all the Ryan Murphy shows, right? There's like a
Mhm.
handful of like incredible, powerful moments, and then everything else is just like, oh man, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Do you guys watch the movie The Witch, set in the 1600s?
I don't think so. That one's like the Vivitch. Is that
The
is that
Yeah.
Vivitch, yes,
yeah.
yes. Well, there's a scene in there where the sister's playing peekaboo with her um baby sister, an infant,
Okay.
and she's playing peekaboo with her. And then one time she does it, she opens her eyes and the baby's gone. Camera pans up to the woods, and it's just a moment where it's just like, whoa, because the witch is there, or is the one that kind of the Vivitch is there who stole her to sacrifice her.
Yeah.
So
You know what's a
it's
good witch movie is The Love Witch, which came out several years ago. But it's kind of this like feminist manifesto about this woman who is just like Is she just a witch? I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is so the woman. I'm blanking on her name. I feel so bad, but she's the actress. She's the director. She's the prop designer. She's the costume designer. Everything you see on screen, she directly had a hand in. And so she was like knitting and crocheting like little doilies for the tables and things like that. And it's such like an impeccably shot. It has this real like 60s, 70s bewitched kind of vibe to it. But it's like it's also like really unsettling at times. Highly recommend The Love Witch, and I can't spoil more than that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the IMDb. It's Anna Biller. Interesting. Yeah, I could see the whole 70s vibe to it. 60s, 70s vibe. Looks pretty cool.
Now, another set of like, I don't know if you would call them witches or if they're just Satanists, but the old people in Rosemary's Baby, like, I just, even though they're evil and they're trying to bring on the devil and like the Antichrist or whatever, like, there was something about them that was just kind of cute because of their like New York accents. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like little old ladies that are like, hell, Satan. Like, I don't know. They just were like really intrigued, even though you're supposed to hate them and they're supposed to be like the villains. It's like, I don't know. There was something that was kind of, I don't want to say cute about them, but like, I don't know. They were kind of endearing, even though they were evil.
Well, I mean, a lot of evil characters are endearing, right? We're drawn to villains, so to speak, in a way.
No.
So could be
There's
that.
there I guess they did like a prequel to Rosemary's Baby that I just watched. I think it's like I think it's called Apartment 7A or Room 7A or something like that with and it's the precursor to Rosemary's Baby. It's really interesting. It's about a
Hmm.
dancer that is sort of promised this amazing career if she carries the devil's baby, and it kind of goes from there. But it's kind of interesting. Interesting premise. Rosemary's Baby being like one of my favorite horror films of all times. It's such a great movie.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite horror films, Josh?
Um, my favorite horror film is, well, I guess I'd call it, yes, horror. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, actually, is the name
Oh,
of the title. But I won't say how many witches it has in it. Uh, but it's really creepy. It's the only Halloween movie that doesn't really have Michael Myers in it. And so John Carpenter wanted to make it a franchise that like every year there would be a new Halloween movie, but it'd be a different, like a Twilight Zone kind of thing. Each episode's
oh,
different.
okay.
And everyone at first was so disappointed because they wanted like a classic slasher film, and this is not that. It's kind of more
Interesting.
psychological horror, and I think the last 20 minutes is some of the most intense like 80s horror you're gonna get.
Mm.
I'm gonna have to watch that. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, I love it, but I grew up watching it on like at the video store. You could like rent a new movie, and you get to rent a movie from the dollar bin for
Oh, okay.
free. And so we'd always get Halloween 3.
Very
Nice.
cool. Very cool. Yeah. I've recently, and I talked about this before, recently got into more watching more horror films for like the creative part of it, seeing how the
Mm-hmm.
filmmakers are what they're doing and how they're being creative with their horror and trying to scare people. And I really appreciate when it's done well. So yeah, I'll add that one to my list. Definitely have to watch it.
It's such a good feeling being scared. Like the adrenaline that you get, pumping.
Nope. I hate it. I can't.
Do you
I don't watch
really?
a lot of horror movies because of this. Even doing, I did a Hell Cow short for Marvel, so the vampire cow they have. I did a
Hmm.
comic about her, and even then I was like, oh, I don't. Do I have to watch a bunch of horror movies? And I did, but it worked out fine.
Is there one particular movie that's just like too scary for you, like you can't watch?
I don't like the kind of horror that like Saw is. Like there's
Hmm.
what I like the horror I like is kind of that like semi campy 80s horror. I'm thinking of movies like Prom Night or Halloween 3 or like April
Sleepaway
Fool's
Camp.
Day. I'm sorry?
Sleepaway Camp.
Oh yeah, that sort of thing. I like that. Even like the original Friday the 13th
Yep,
or like Halloween, that sort of vibe is what I like.
Nice.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a movie that just I don't know if it just came out, but I just watched it, so for me it's new. And it's based on this young girl who gets transported into an 80s movie that it was starred her dead mom. And so she's like, it's sort of like a Friday the 13th
Hmm.
type slasher film, and she has to try to escape this film. And it's super campy, super like 80s, like stereotypes of like the virgin, the slutty girl that gets killed.
Hmm.
It's really funny. I wish I could remember the name of it, but
Totally Killer.
yeah, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Totally Killer. Good
yeah,
movie. Yeah, I
really
agree.
good movie. It's really funny.
Yeah.
You should check it out if you like those like 80s.
Oh
It's
yeah.
making some of that genre, but like in a really good way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in it that are like really good. It like I started watching it and I was like, wow, that person's in it. That's like crazy. And then they like the little cameos just kept on coming.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Gabe. Totally Killer is a really good film. I do, and it has a time travel aspect to it. So,
Yeah.
well, very cool. Is there any, or I guess, where can people expect? What can people expect from you next, Josh? I know you're working on some new thing.
Oh.
Anything you could tell us?
I have a story coming out in January from Marvel. It's about Gambit, the X-Men. It's a
Ooh,
what
my
if
favorite.
comic. So
Okay.
it's what if Gambit became a Herald of Galactus?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
pretty wild premise, and it goes some places I don't think you would. I don't know what you would expect from that premise, but it doesn't do that. I'll say that much. In a good way. It's a lot of fun, and I can finally start talking about the video game I'm working on. I write for Gearbox Entertainment, and I'm working on the new Borderlands title that comes out next
Nice.
year. So definitely, I'll be talking about that nonstop once we have an official release date.
Really cool.
Very cool. I mean, a lot of people, of course, probably who weren't as familiar with Gambit before when then they saw Deadpool are probably huge fans now of the Gambit character. I know I was a fan of him before, but even more so now. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you toss and turn with him.
Yeah, I think the challenge is getting all the Cajun-isms right because you don't want to be like you're not making fun of him. That's
Right.
the trick.
Yeah.
He just talks ridiculous, and you just have to love him for it.
Yeah, well,
What kind of research do you do for that? Like, do you watch movies? You
I
read?
have friends who actually are from New Orleans and the surrounding areas. And so I'm kind of making them do like a Cajun pass for me on my lettering. I'm
Right.
like, can we just make, I don't want to like, I'm not doing a parody. I want it
yeah,
to sound like something Gambit would say if he was a real person who lived in the bayou or whatever.
Yeah.
So I always want to get, whether I'm writing about like, uh, you know, a Mexican character or a gay character or whatever. I always want to try to get as close as I can to accurate.
Yeah.
And this is a little more of a challenge because I've never been to Louisiana.
Yeah. I was just gonna mention that as far as when you're writing for like a Latino character, it's like you want to have those little touchstone moments for people reading it where you're like, oh, I say that, or like my uncle or my tia say that, or that's something
Hmm.
cultural. But at the same time, like you don't want to be stereotypical and like make it a cliche.
Yeah, and I'll also say about this Gambit comic, it's cosmic with capital C, capital O, S, etc. It's a big story, and we go very far away from New Orleans, so it's
Yeah.
okay,
kind of a different shade of Gambit than you're used to as well.
that's
Really
exciting.
Yeah, and
I
the
was
art
just
by Manuel Garcia is blowing me away. I'm getting pages in every morning, which is my favorite thing to do.
very cool. I was going to ask who you refer to a reference to get a cow correct.
Oh, uh, the artist Claire Rowe really handled all the cow work for me. I
Okay.
do have a folder on my phone of pictures of baby cows because I love cows, but I did not send those over to Claire. She is just a master artist and knew exact. But on the cover for that Blood Hunters comic that has the Hellcat story, Greg Land did the cover, and he's like a famous cover artist and interiors too. But it's so funny that he drew a full vampire cow on the cover. I'm like, one of the greats is drawing for my comic, but my comic is about a cow. So
It's still a win. Still a win.
it's
Still a
still a
win,
win.
yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to? Are there any conventions coming up for you that you'll be attending? I know you just got back from New York Comic Con.
Yeah, I'll be in November. I'll be at Latino Comics Expo. This is like I've been there like 6 or 7 times now. It's based out of Long Beach at
Yeah,
MOLA,
yeah.
the Museum of Latin American
Hmm.
Art, and it's free to the public. So if you're in SoCal, definitely come up to Long Beach because it's a nice day. It's always nice weather, and it's just like it's great. And the museum itself is
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. I've been there. It's a really cool place. Yeah.
Nice. Well, definitely recommend people checking that out as well as your future work that's coming out. It's really cool.
No, thank you for having me, guys. I love chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Anyone out there watching, let us know what your favorite witch movie is, or which TV show, or which book, or which witch you like the best. We want to know hear from you guys. So until next time, anything else you have for us, Gabe? Josh, anything?
Nah, I'm gonna go eat a sandwich right now. So
Ooh, that's good. There's an old 80s TV movie called Teen Witch that has a rap battle in it. And it's definitely type in Teen Witch rap, and you
Okay.
will see the most 80s rap you've ever come across in like a cringe way.
yeah, it's amazing.
And on that note, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll go watch Teen Witch. I'll link it right below so we can watch it now. Take care, everyone. Thank you again, Josh, for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.